Egypt. In the Judeo-Christian Bible, as found in the book of Exodus, Moses receives the 10 Commandments from God after disappearing on Mount Sinai for a period of 40 days and 40 nights. When the prophet returns to his people, his appearance has drastically changed.
It's very interesting. He had been around this God for so long. His face was glowing, and he had to literally cover himself because people were afraid of him because he had changed, his countenance had changed so much.
Basically, his people recognize him, but also see that he has physically changed. And so this is very interesting, because if you were to take it from a biblical perspective, you would think that an encounter with God is something nice, something phenomenal, but not that it has physical effects. In the case of the Moses encounter, what you have is something very physical, something very specific, suggestive that what happened to him is a very physical encounter with a deity, an extraterrestrial being, rather than what we would generally classify as divine.
If we look at it from the context of today's alien abduction stories, you know, was God coming down from the sky actually a UFO descending? Was he taken aboard, abducted onto a UFO, and held for 40 days, and then returned? I think, you know, if we look at it in that context, we've got what sounds like a classic abduction.
Could the biblical accounts of Enoch and Moses suggest an extraterrestrial agenda? One where alien beings communicate messages of peace and harmony with humans. Northeast Syria, the Kabur River. According to the Hebrew Bible, it was here, in the 6th century BC, that divine beings descended from heaven and made contact with a 30-year-old Hebrew priest named Ezekiel.
Ezekiel was by the river Chebar, and he said a great whirlwind came toward him. He described it as a fire enfolding itself, and out of the fire was the color of amber, which is the Hebrew word, which means polished spectrum metal, which implies that it's metallic and that it's spinning, and it lands in front of him, right directly in front of him, and suddenly out of this whirlwind come 4 creatures.
In the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel calls these spiritual beings cherubims and describes them as having 4 faces, 4 wings, and skin that shone like polished bronze.
Ezekiel says that he was taken up into the sky and taken to different places where he could see different things. And then he was told some of the future things that were going to come.
But what in fact was the mysterious object that touched down in front of Ezekiel and lifted him up to the sky? And who were the strange beings that emerged and shared a vision of the future with the prophet?
He described them as the likeness of a man, but they seem to have different faces on them of different animals, and some people have interpreted that as perhaps even like a spacesuit. You know, imagine the helmet, oxygen mask, that kind of thing. Could he have been actually seeing something that was a face but didn't look like a face normally looks?
He's got the best description of a UFO that's anywhere in the Bible, because he basically says that the thing looked like a wheel within a wheel, kind of a classic flying saucer description.
It's basically the account of a guy who's been abducted, who has been told certain things, and who's then returned to the place of origin. It would be what we today would describe as an abduction account.